Hi, this is Dr. Mark Sehl for the 44th talk on the YouTube channel Therapy for the Heart. And it's called For the Heart because of the role of emotions that play in our lives. So I'm glad to be here. It's Tuesday, and I was trying to think of a title today. So the one that I came up with does self-help help? And it's a little tricky. Well, not that tricky, but self-help. I'm a therapist, so I try to help people help themselves. But so why do they need me? Because so many of their actions and behaviors have not resulted in good outcomes, difficult relationships, poor job, dissatisfaction with family life, employment, having joy in life, too much depression or anxiety. So they need a professional because they're not going to be able to do it on their own. But I do help people help themselves, really, because I don't interpret a lot. I don't give a lot of advice. I help people evolve and figure out by speaking freely, they can really work through the shame of not being able to say things out loud to their family, spouse, whoever, because they have a lot of shame, and then that's not the only reason that people are inhibited, but that's one of the major ones. So I call shame the soul killer, and I run a psychotherapy training group, and there are many experienced therapists there. There's some experienced, some less, but they all encounter the difficult time they have when I say, okay, now this is the section where you will speak freely, whatever's on your mind, and there's a silence, and that's because it's very difficult. So I might say, well, so did anybody have anything after I made that announcement that occurred to them, but which they didn't say? And then some hands will shoot up, or they'll just shout out, whatever. So, and what was the resistance? Well, I was a little embarrassed about what I was going to say. And so I said, that's good. I'm glad that you spoke up, and somebody else then might speak up. The thing is that we withhold things from ourselves. That's a withholding from yourself of the embarrassment, because you don't really know you may know in part what it's about, um, but you may not. So that's the way life goes, and I believe firmly in free association and speaking freely. Uh, so there was an article on the Psychology Today about laws of attraction. What attracts people to people, and there was a lot of different references to different things in the article. It's an interesting article, but one of the things that I found missing was really relating to anything too much that's unconscious that drives people. Uh, there's a lot of advice and prescriptions, for life, and some interesting ideas like people who are attracted to people with the same DNA. That's interesting fact, but what are you going to do with the DNA? I think I would more bet on nurture and environment and how that influences people's choices later in life. Like we talk about Mary, who was in therapy for a while, and she didn't want to come to therapy because she thought she had to talk about the past. And I said, no, you don't. I didn't say it that way, but no, you don't. So after 2 years, she was talking about her crying about her father, who was very unappreciative and dismissive of her, and she found that she was attracting men who were very much like her unavailable father, who did not acknowledge her and didn't make her feel beautiful and worthwhile. So she felt worthless. That was unconscious. That wasn't. You can't read a self-help book and try to figure out. Well, you have an unconscious need to be attracted to um, people like your father. Well, that's pretty cliche, right? That's often true, either the mother or the father. Yeah, so, but we're not aware of that, and really, we have an intellectual concept of it, but not an emotional awareness. So, in 2 years, when she was crying about her father, then she discovered her emotional were ruling her choices of men, just like her father. And after that, she could make different choices in life. So that we ruled a lot by the unconscious. I remember one person I was working with, he was slipping his wedding band off and on, so I noticed it, and I knew he was having trouble with relationship with his wife, so I didn't want to point it out to him. I don't like to make people self-conscious about their behavior, but I did ask him later on, how are things are going with your wife? And he says, well, I'm sad to say, we're thinking about divorce. So that was on his mind when he was slipping off the ring, but he didn't really say it. He would have gotten there. But if he was someone else that was doing the same behavior, he would have been totally unaware often about what that symbolic gesture was all about. So we saw Sehl, you know. Sehl's mother went into, these are on the podcast and also on the YouTube videos about Sehl. Oh, what a wonderful story. Sehl and his mother fell in love with him. But she was not consciously aware at all of the fact that she was relating to Sehl like he was her mother, 9-month-old infant. She had a transference to him. And she didn't get that. That's unconscious. She became conscious of it with the help of Beatrice Beebe, the therapist who was working with her, but she would not have come conscious of that. She had courage to go in therapy, you know, really courageous woman. And so Sehl would have been left on his own if she never went, and he would have then have inherited this idea that the difficulty communicating with his mother was all his fault. You know, something was wrong with him. It was not the mother. It was really the mother. You know, but she did discover it. So there's so many unconscious processes. We did a podcast talking about the unconscious, and also we talked about it out here, and how New York Times had an article how the unconscious really affects so much of our lives, and we're not aware of it. You know, how can one person be very gracious at one moment and an obnoxious bastard at a dinner party, all of a sudden, the same person, you know? And they're not aware of that. So what we do in therapy is try to help someone become aware of the forces within them that are affecting their choices, like Mary, but they're not, at the moment, aware of it at all. They just are unhappy with the choices that they repeatedly make in their lives over and over and over again. So I like the article, but I said it's too much on self-help, and here's what you do. They're prescriptions for life, right? And they're interesting, but I think we've heard a lot of them, you know? Like, oh, well, don't pick men. How come you're picking men or women that are unfamiliar or unavailable to you? He has Dr. Aaron, Arthur Aaron made a statement. He said, while unrequited love has its romantic appeal, most of us actually prefer a available person. Well, my experience finds that not true in my experience. Maybe my experience is just very biased because I'm a therapist and people come to me for help, but that could be true. But I think that you can find a lot of the literature that says people, I just Googled it, how people who find unavailable partners. You know, Google it and you'll find out. So I'm a therapist, and that's what I deal with, is try to help people become themselves. Now, if you're going to therapy, you're not going to say, well, I want to go to therapy, I want to become myself, right? You're going to say, well, I have depression, I have anxiety, relationship problems. But that's ultimately what you're going to do, is to try to become more aware of your character, of how that your choices and your feelings influence your behavior. Like codependency, you know, people who are codependent with the alcohol, they never realize until they formed a group. Well, not never, but they formed a group of Al-Anon, and then they all of a sudden they checked out and say, well, why am I trying to change the alcoholic person? Why is that my focus in life? So that's true of most codependencies. Hey, we're all codependent. We all need each other to a greater and a lesser degree, but we do need each other. That's not a pejorative. You're codependent. Well, so are you. Now shut your mouth. People come up and they say these unasked for interpretations of their character, you know. It's not very helpful in socialization, but anyway, people do it all the time. Oh, you're codependent. And actually, I don't think they really know what that means to them. They may know, but usually they don't know what that really means. It's a phrase that we're very used to in social discourse, but to really know what it means to you, yeah. You know, in one of my videos, I did something about why we don't learn about ourselves. And it's because it's very frightening to learn, take responsibility for our behavior. So if you're in a relationship, you can always blame the other person. They're not emotional. They're not giving me enough attention, which could be true. Yeah, but then the question is, well, how come you're with this person? Not that you should leave that person, but investigate why you're with that person. What's going on? And I don't confront with that. I don't confront people when I don't know them, because that's challenging and it can feel like an attacking. Uh, so I don't do that in therapy. Maybe later on, when they really are more comfortable with themselves and not feeling exposed, they might ask some questions like that. So, but people don't need to be made feel uncomfortable in therapy. They need to be feel welcomed, that you're on their side, that uh, you're interested in it. You're interested in their story, which is basic. That you're someone. Sometimes people never have had someone interested in their story, really interested. I don't just mean, well, here's what I did, blah 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 blah, and the person kind of loses focus because they're really not interested, or they might change the discussion around to them. Oh, well, you went to that movie. Oh, well, I saw a movie just yesterday, and let me tell you about it. And they go, so. That happens, right? I'm probably sure you're struck by that experience yourself. So, I had somebody come in to me recently, not to come in, it was just this morning. I don't divulge names of patients. Jane was different because she gave me permission to write her story, and it was published. That's fascinating. By the way, podcast is not in competition with YouTube. It's not. It's companion. But in podcasts, you could listen to the story while you're walking along the streets, or rowing your canoe in Central Park, or just taking it easy and strolling around, or being home alone. You don't have to have a PC there, or have a visual. On the other hand, people like to, for some reason, watch me. No, I think I have a pretty nice conversational tone here, so I think I can understand why people watch it. But all people say, well, I don't have the ability to watch it. Maybe they're in another land, they can't afford it, so maybe they can tune into a podcast or iTunes. So please subscribe to the podcast, Therapy for the Heart. Same name as the YouTube channel, Therapy for the Heart. They are companions. They walk hand in hand, although they're different. And I like them both. I really enjoy doing this, except when I'm trying to think Tuesday morning of what am I going to talk about today. And I don't want to disappoint people like last time when I didn't do too many, YouTube videos. So there's just a new podcast came out this morning, actually. So you can subscribe to it by going to iTunes or podcast and subscribing to it. Write a it says reviews and ratings. You can rate it, give it 4 or 5 stars or 1 star. It's up to you. And also give yourself a title, a pen name, and often try to be more real with your name so I can recognize it. And then download a few podcasts. But I love being on YouTube also, so that's why I'm happy to be here. I don't know if I wanted to say any more about that. About being happy to be here. Jane was a really interesting case of early attachment going on to adult life, and just another emphasis on the self-help books and prescriptions for treatment, because there's a lot of advice around. I'm sure you've had it, full of it up to here, sometimes starting when you were very young. But advice doesn't relate to the unconscious need to sabotage or the unconscious conflict about loving that Jane had. She wanted to be connected to someone, and then she said, well, Dr. Sehl, when you explained that I have conflicts about loving and that's why I'm not with somebody, that was a brilliant insight that she achieved on her own. So, yeah. So that's it for today. The self-help help. And I'm going to be seeing you next Tuesday, I hope. And please comment on this channel if you can. Make a comment, subscribe to it, like the talk, and also my number is 917-991-9113. I take texts now. It's pretty cool because I can be doing something and be preoccupied with something else, and also the text can come through, but it doesn't have to interrupt my whatever I'm doing. And also, you can visit my website at marksehl at that's my Gmail, marksehl@gmail.com, or my website at marksehl.com. Thanks for being here. See you soon. Bye.